I have to go really soon, but I just feel like I have to get this message out. Like, just been thinking a lot about space as a precondition for feeling. And there's like multiple corollaries to this. It's making me like more interested in the built environment and architecture. I remember a couple years ago, I was like looking into kind of like architecture of asylums in like the 1800s because there's like this book that I saw at the library that was just about how, this was like talking about the UK, but it was talking about like the types of architecture that people believed would be mentally restorative and like helpful, right? And and I think there's like two different interpretations of the idea of space being a precondition for feeling, right? Both of which I'm like sort of interested in. One is the architectural angle, which is like what type of space do you need to enter in order to feel something? How the design, like, and these two are related, by the way, but like one of them is about more so like the design. And I know there's a lot of schools of thought on this. It's just like things that I've been thinking about, right? But the other one is kind of like an anti-density argument, right? And or like anti-compression, and that's like about everything, right? Like, oh, we say like time heals, like if you have more space from something, give yourself distance, right? These metaphors, and conversely, like, I'm thinking travel, I'm thinking like Taylor Swift's like Bolter song, right? Avoidance, but some way to give yourself space, right? Quote unquote. And in addition, like, but when I say like anti-density and anti-compression, I'm thinking about like physical space, being able to take up space, going into a place that is a large room that only has one thing in it, right? Like I like and for that one, like the reason I started even thinking about this was I would go to these galleries, these art galleries, and immediately feel overwhelmed. But but the overwhelm that I felt was more about the space than like the art. And part of that is could be like, oh, like we have trained ourselves to only feel like we can be emotional in certain public spaces. I think that's fair. I think there's a good amount of that happening where it's like, you go to an art gallery and it feels like a place where it's okay to, slow down, where like you're supposed to like pay attention to details, things that like there's different rules. And I think this is like kind of one of the founding like thrusts of like performance studies, but it's like about what are the rules of normal life, what are the places that inspire like different rules, what does it look like when you do something non-normative, and you call it art. Like I find that so overwhelming because it does make me personally feel like anything is art as long as we give it space. And that notion absolutely overwhelms me because I'm just like, in that case, then, I mean, it isn't always about craft. Like, I love craft. I'm a big believer in it. I have some friends who are really, really big into craft and process. But it strikes me that that's not what the purpose of an art museum or an art gallery necessarily is. Like, even when I study, like, poetic craft, poetics, like, it all comes down to the emotional register. Are you conveying the correct emotion? Are you able to create those heart resonances, right? But anyways, to go back to the first definition of space as a precondition for feeling, just like, and mind you, like, I'm not an architectural student, so I don't know like too much, but one thing that I've been thinking about is through like a design and technology perspective, right? I study design, so more so like the theory of it is like, can we create spaces that like the biggest thing I've been thinking about is how to hold our hearts wider open, right? How can we like be that tension for other people? How can we like use our like strength and our like fingers, whatever, right, to like hold each other's hearts and imaginations open when the world potentially is like closing it, right? Like, and I find that like the open close metaphor like so instructive, at least for me personally. Oh my god, I'm gonna be late. But for so long, guys, I felt like my world was closing in on me. The things that I would be allowed to do, these structures. And as you gain life experience, you also gain like more mental models, you gain schemas, you gain things that you think you can and can't do, you gain, and these are gains, right? These are more and more, but they also hold you back. When it's like, when you come from like a technologically and like informed process, then it's kind of like this idea of data. Data is a form of enclosure. It doesn't allow for imagination. It doesn't allow for risk or something different because it consumes everything. So it's kind of like, oh, like the predictions it makes are well informed. But information and heartfulness, for holding our hearts open, is totally different. Because like things can like change, right? Things can happen. New things can happen. I know this is all a little bit naive, but it's just like getting this down. When it comes to like space, physical space as a precondition of feeling, I've been thinking like, how can we like build spaces where people that inspire certain emotional resonances? And that, and in some ways, that might be the project of an art gallery in an art museum. I felt like the other day I was like texting a new friend from the Walker Museum. I felt so open to it. I was strolling in this gallery full of beautiful objects, and the main impact it had on me in my daily life was to allow me to be more open to a new friend. And I know that that's like unconventional. I know that's kind of applied. That's an application, right? Some people will be like, you should go to an art gallery to fully be present, experience the art. And I think like, I want to argue for like multiple layers, or maybe just like, maybe an art museum is not the best place, because I think it is important to respect, right? And I don't think I'm not. I think it's like in the spirit, but maybe it's like building another space that's like a texting room. Like, I know that sounds like crazy, but like building some kind of space that it's not about allowing people to function, but it's like a space that holds people on a certain emotional register. I think a lot of times when we think about like social spaces, we're more so thinking about functional aspects of it, like, oh, it has a pool table so we can all play and like we can all bond and be friends. Or like it serves alcohol, that's a social lubricant. And these can all be part of it, but I feel like I'm trying to point to something different, which is like the display of like emotional things, right? Like whether that's like a painting, like a Rothko or like whatever. And like sort of the application layer of that, right? I even hesitate to say that, but it's like it's not an application like it's integrating art with design for the purpose of like, I don't know, like enriching our lives, like having a more spiritual practice, right? Like, and so insofar as this, I think another thing that I've just been thinking about has been churches, because I think that is a kind of like applied design art space. And I personally I've loved like living in places where I have walkable access to a church that I know is open often, and just sitting in the architecture of the space and enjoying. The reason I'm like making this video even is I saw a TikTok that was about like going to a church near me to listen to the new Ethel Cain album, and it strikes me that like it's important for us to, here's the insight, it's like mobile devices, right? Mobile devices disanchor us from the context in which we experience something, our physical context, because it tells us that the context window is the screen. Oh my God. And it's like, no, like the context, like what we should be more careful about, like how our mobile devices allow us to experience something very profound, maybe in an environment where that's not the most suited. Like, yes, everything can be profound, but also like it can be easier to be less intentional about our physical environment, because that's like the whole point of like mobility. And I don't know, like this is just like space as a precondition for feeling, right? It's like maybe like you are not unlocking like what you can, what an encounter can do for you if you're not like in a certain place. I don't know, I'm just like very curious about this, and it's something I've been thinking about. Okay, I'm late. I have to go ice skating with my friends, but I will talk to you guys later.